review. Book one was about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Leading Through the Heat, Essential Leadership Lessons from the Firehouse to the Corporate World, none other than Mr. Mark Andrew. Welcome, Mr. Mark.
Thanks for having me on, Daniel.
Yes, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, I just retired as a firefighter, paramedic, and fire captain with the city of Dearborn, Michigan. We're on Detroit's west border, one of the bigger departments in the state of Michigan. And I just had a lot of great opportunities there to make my way up the ranks and spent the last, I want to say, 7 years as a fire captain on a crew of about 8 to 10 people and leading a team that was highly functioning. And it was always a pleasure of mine to work with all of the crew members.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Mr. Mark, through your book itself. Okay, let's promote it, and I hope I can help you to do that. Captain Andrew, the book's subtitle promises lessons forged in emergency response. Was there a specific fire call that become the forge for you? A moment when you realize everything you thought you knew about leadership was about to be tested.
I couldn't say a specific call, but I do have some anecdotes in the book of some calls earlier in my career where I struggled knowing what the expectations were, struggled knowing what leaders were in charge, who to take orders from, and knowing always what was expected of me in the moment. And I remember talking to a lot of my peers and colleagues at the time when we were young on the job about scenes that would work well versus scenes that did not go well, and always making that strategic promise that we would try to do better when it was our turn, if we were lucky enough to be leaders.
Very well said. Very well said, Mr. Mark. You described leadership in the firehouse as a survival, not a theory. What was the hardest lesson you learned not from a textbook, but from watching someone yourself or another officers fail in real time?
One of the There were a couple. A big one in leadership you hear is you never ask one of your team members to do something you're not willing to do yourself.
Mm.
But putting that in practice is sometimes challenging because there are going to be some emergency scenes where they're going to need a commander over here and you're going to have to delegate a crew over there. But a lot of the times the crew will be remain intact. And I found you get people to follow you when you're with them side by side doing the job with them, including if that job is dangerous, if it's cold, if it's hot, if it's dirty. When that leader is with them participating in the suffering, I found that the crews are more willing to follow.
Very well said, Mr. Mark. The description mentioned hard earned lessons while fighting fires. Without giving too much away, can you share a one lesson that was earned with the most personal cost?
One that I learned about the middle of my career was I started to see some leaders, and it's not their fault. It's kind of the way, sometimes the way they were taught, sometimes it's the way the big bosses were treating them. But we occasionally would run across, and I saw this in a prior career in a prior field, leaders unwilling to make decisions. And that just hampered the operations. The leaders that always wanted to run decisions up the chain of command. And true good management empowers people to make decisions, whether it's the junior person uh, uh, who's just assigned a task can decide the best way to do it, or whether you as the officer can decide tactics at a house fire, or the chief officer needs to make decisions based on a deployment of resources. And if any of those people are making decisions worried about what the boss above them is going to say, it just slows down the progress of the whole operation. So I found being able to make decisions in the moment and having the courage to make them, and the management having your back when you make those decisions, really helped me in my career.
100% to support you. What made you decide, after the decades of service, that now was the time to distill these experiences into a book? Was there a particular moment or conversation that finally pushed you to write?
Yes, there was. I have one of those GoPro cameras on my fire helmet and was
Mm.
posting on Instagram some of the fire footage on my page, and then also sharing on some national Instagram firefighter pages. And it started garnering a little bit of a following. People were interested in it. And not only that, the comment section sparked a really good discussion back and forth on tactics and strategy and leadership things that ended up getting me to be a guest on a few fire service podcasts. And then I noticed I was writing talking points down, and then I looked at the talking points and said, "Oh, that would make a nice essay or a magazine article." And then when I just started reading more and more essays I had or talking points I had, I said, "You know what? I bet if I knuckle down, I could turn these into chapters." And so I tried it, and before I knew it, I had 3 chapters. And so I said, "All right, let's just really do this." And so I just knuckled down, and before I had 7 or 8 chapters, and then it became hard. Then now it's work. Now I got to mine those ideas. To not
Mm.
make this just a group of essays, I needed to really mine my thoughts and mine some other literature and mine some other leadership authors for some inspiration, to find a way to really go in depth and have a full sized book out of this.
Mr. Mark, the book described as a raw and honest. Was there anything you initially left out because it was too vulnerable or unflattering? And if so, what made you decide to put it back in?
I actually was open from the beginning of sharing mistakes I had made, uh, uh, especially on the crew, on a day to day management of people aspect. If just a run comes in, and when we're doing an after action report or reviewing the scene the next day, I would always be open and honest. Hey, I made this decision in the moment, but now that I could look back, I can now see this other thing that might have worked better. Those discussions with the crew in those after action meetings, I found gave them now the confidence to make decisions in the field and get involved in scenes because they saw I was willing to learn also. So I was willing from the get go in the book to put a few instances of mistakes I made. Uh, when I was a new officer, inability to quickly make a decision. I was still worried about what the boss would say, and that decision making time frame ended up being something that took me some time to kind of hone as a skill. I talked a little bit about coming up the ranks and um, making a mistake involving one of the bosses who was mad at me, but I had a decision to make, and then I let this boss affect the decision, and it completely changed the deployment of the rigs for a couple of hours. And I should have just held my ground, stood up for what was right. And so I use that as a leadership lesson as well.
Interesting, Mr. Mark. The principle of presence matters more than micromanaging is the central to the book. What does the true presence look like inside a burning building, and how does it different from corporate leader standing in a boardroom?
Um, it obviously is viscerally different, but not in theory. With us being present, I could be in the fire station. And if we're going to hold the training class, I'm going to be there with my crew learning these new skills along with them. But if the crew wants to show the junior person a new skill, I don't need to be there because I don't want the junior person to see me micromanaging the firefighters that are teaching the class. So I've got to be present, but I don't want to micromanage everything. So there are times where I'll delegate training to other people. But there's times when the training is very important. And so now I need to be present to send that message of how important these skills are. And then you translate that to, if we're at a fire, being present is not asking your crew to do something you're not willing to do. So if we're going into a house fire, I'm going with them and I'm going to be right next to them. I'm not going to just feed the hose in at the door and just ask them, hey, how hot is it in there? No, I'm going to be right beside my partner and I'm going to be helping search for a victim, or I'm going to be moving the furniture so my partner could hit it with a hose stream. And what I found was that type of presence is what gets people to want to follow, because they now know I can trust my skills because I've got somebody watching right next to me. So I can focus on my tasks and then my safety is being watched out for. I could translate that to the corporate world. If you're a lawyer and you're a partner and you've got some junior associates and then you got a trial and you got an all-nighter and you got to go over these case files. If you want the team to follow you, you better pull that all-nighter with them. Don't delegate that to them and you go sleep in your bed and show up at court the next morning. Same goes for engineers. You got a deadline to meet for design in some car you're making. You better be there with your team with those blueprints and those clay models and those computer-aided designs. If you delegate it all to them and go hide in your office, that's not being present. So you need to be there with the team when the work is happening.
You write about building trust when stakes are high. In profession where lives literally hang in the balance, how do you build the trust with a new firefighting who has not yet proven themselves?
What helped me was caring about the job from the beginning. So in the fire service, unlike the military, everybody does every job. So the officers were a junior guy, then they promote up to senior guy, then they promote up to driving the fire truck. And then if they get good enough scores on the tests and the interviews, they might be chosen to be a lieutenant and become an officer or a boss. But those are sometimes going to be 10 to 15 years into the career before those promotions happen. And so you've now got a 15-year track record of your work. When that work was good, you cared about the job. You were always learning new skills. You were participating in those 911 calls and participating in the training. And when you went on calls, your work was good. That is the reputation you build before you become a boss. And so I found the reputation is like a framework or a groundwork before you become a leader. So now the trust is baked in because the team already knows your past performance and they know who you are.
Mr. Mark, the chapter on what it means to truly care about your team intrigues me. Any paramilitary culture that often prizes toughness, how do you express care without being perceived as weak?
Oh, that's a great question because, yeah, you don't want to be a pushover. But if you don't care about the team, they're going to lose interest. And so for me, presence was one of the bigger things. If I'm hiding away in my private room all day, I'm going to miss those subtle clues of stress on the job, poor performance, mistakes being made. But if I truly am present, I can catch little things when they're little, and I could show the care in wanting to train somebody up or provide them the resources to get better. Paying attention to their needs. If people are getting burned out, maybe I could rearrange some assignments. Maybe I could look at the work balance in the workflow. If people are struggling at a certain task on the job, if I'm present and I see that and now I'm aware of it, I can tailor the training to beef up those skills. And so not only that, I can then sometimes delegate these tasks to the senior firefighters that are in the middle of the ranks. So I'm showing care for them because they now get to be seen as a trusted, valuable member. And so the junior people are looking up to them. And so I'm caring for the member because I care about their development, but I also care about the senior member so they could learn their leadership skills and build their skills. So now everybody is kind of building a foundation of trust and building a foundation of skills that they could take forward in their career.
Very well said. Mr. Mark, you've seen both officers who earned loyalty and those who lost it. In your observation, what is the single fastest way for a leader to lose the trust of their crew?
One of the ones I saw, and I saw this in a prior job, I saw it in an earlier fire department I was at, and I occasionally saw it in the fire department I worked my career in. And that would, and once again, it's not these people's fault. It was just the way they were taught. It was the way the leadership and the administrations handled things. But you occasionally would run into people that if somebody made a mistake on the crew, the officer wouldn't take the blame. And I have a quote in the book: officer should take very little of the credit when things go well, and they should take more of the blame when things don't go well. I found that leads to a lot of trust. Most of the time, if a minor mistake happens, the officer could go to the administration and say, this is my fault. I didn't properly give them the expectations. I will train them up and I will make sure this doesn't happen again. But unfortunately, in a lot of the corporate world and in the fire service, I see bosses who tell the vice president or the chief, I had no idea this was going on. It's totally this guy's fault. And then the junior guy gets all the discipline and it just burns through morale. So that leader stepping up and being in front of their crew when trouble happens is one of the best ways you could gain the trust of the crew.
Certainly. So, Mr. Mark, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
The I guess the they're kind of the same. One, I would like to sell books. I would like to see this do well, but more important than that, I just wanted to positively affect a change in leadership culture in any workplace. I would love for there to be a vibrant discussion of leadership tactics and better ways to manage people, so all of us can leave a workplace better than the way we found it.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Mark, and looking forward for more success. And what will be a piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
My best advice would be get good at the job. So when you're new on the job, pay attention, learn your skills, work hard, have good attendance, care about your coworkers, care about the customers or the 911 callers, and show a high degree of skill for what you do. Because it stinks if you're hiding in the background, playing it safe, not putting your name on projects, and coasting along, and then you put in for manager and get hired, and really nobody knows much about you. You're much better off going into a management position already having a resume of high performance, showing that you can make the right decisions in crunch time, because now they're going to trust you from day one.
Create your value, people. Create your value. And thank you for that empowering advice, Mr. Mark. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
I do got to say there is a much better landscape for management and leadership now than was 30 years ago. We've got authors now that are from various disciplines. Jocko Willnick's Extreme Ownership is great. Simon Sinek wrote Leaders Eat Last. Mel Robbins' Let Them are some of the best sellers in the country right now. And that's great to see. People from a self-improvement, management, and leadership standpoint are some of the best-selling authors out there. Whereas you go 30, 40 years ago and leadership was the occasional book by some CEO or some retired Army general, and it was such a niche audience. I love the fact that making workplaces better is such a vibrant topic in the culture today.
Yes, thank you for the recommended books, Mr. Mark. And to wrap up our discussion for today, or before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course my book 101 review in sixth season too, comedy 101 in fourth season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 are in fifth season, science 101, sex 101 fourth season, and my baby podcast Trivia 101, Spiritual Awakening 101, Motivation 101, Law 101, Entrepreneurship 101, Coaching 101, and of course, my Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Mark, if you could sit down with a young captain fresh to their rank and whisper one piece of advice in their ear before their first major incident, what would be that advice?
Listen to your crew and be present. It's very tempting in management to delegate all of your job to the junior people. You could delegate a little bit, but be present and follow up with your team and let them know you care.
Be present, people. Be present and create your own value. So, Mr. Mark, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, I will have the Amazon link in your description. They can purchase my book, and I'm on Instagram on Mark DBN Fire, and I've got some GoPro helmet camera up there, and hopefully in the comment section a good discussion on tactics and strategy.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Mark, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to rise. So I have one more question, Mr. Mark. The book is honest about failure. Is there a failure you still carry with you, one that fundamentally changed how you lead from day forward?
I don't live in those regrets because those failures were tremendous learning opportunities. But I did learn after a few months of being an officer to trust myself. I was still worried about what the chief was going to say, and I was hesitant in making decisions. And then I realized I was getting through to the crew, and they did respond to the orders and training I was putting out. And I learned through that to trust myself. Don't be worried about what the boss is going to say. Justify your actions afterwards.
Certainly. So, Mr. Mark, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
What can people see you soon? Yes, let's support Mr. Mark. And I'm inviting you again to please do come over to my abstract essay and let's talk about the writing